Hi and welcome to what is hopefully the complete guide to sound design on the Electribe 2 and sampler. This tutorial won't be about creating beats, just the individual sounds. And even though what you're seeing here is the Electribe 2 sampler, I'll be covering sound design common to both machines because it's very similar. Okay, let's get started with the oscillator section. Every sound on the Electribe begins with a sound source, whether it's external audio coming in through the audio jack, a sample or instrument that exists on the device, or an oscillator that produces a steady, simple, pitched sound. For the waveform oscillators, the style of the sound can be shaped using the edit knob, which as you can see can also change the shape of the waveform. Once the sound is selected using the oscillator knob or the sample knob, unless it's audio in, the sound itself can be pitched manually using this button or played with the keyboard. Using Shift and the pitch knob activates glide, which controls the slide speed between notes. This is also known as portamento on some other synths. On the sampler, the edit knob can be used to change the start point of a sample, or played in reverse. Changing the start point can be used, for example, to take the edge off a cymbal. Using the voice assigned parameter in the menus, you can change between playing sounds monophonically, which means one note at a time, or polyphonically for chords or for overlapping notes. We'll get into the differences between poly 1 and poly 2 or mono 1 and mono 2 after we talk about envelope generators. Let's move on to filters. Almost every sound, except the sine wave, produces harmonics. You can see this on the spectrum graph above, that when I generate a sound, whether it's an oscillator or a sample, it generates frequencies way beyond just the frequency of the voice itself. Filters cut out certain frequencies, and by reducing or eliminating the harmonics, change the character of the sound we're generating. A low-pass filter lets the low frequencies pass, but cuts off the high ones. A high-pass filter does the opposite, lets the higher frequencies pass, but mutes or cuts out the low frequencies. And the bandpass filter cuts off both the highs and the lows and only lets a narrow band of frequencies pass through and be heard. Another important property of the filter is resonance. What the resonance knob does is amplify the sounds at the filter cutoff frequency. With a high resonance, you'll effectively get another tone sounding at the cutoff point, in addition to the main frequency of the sound you're playing. So to summarize, the filter knob not only changes the cutoff point of the filter, but also where the resonance affects the sound. On clean sounds, the resonance can literally pick off the harmonics one by one. This can result in a very interesting and beautiful effect, especially when you consider the ability to modulate filters, which is what we get to next. The filter EG INT, or filter envelope generator intensity knob, is a bit confusing because it uses the attack and decay knobs to control it, even if the amp EG button is off. So what we're doing is animating the cutoff point, and the EG INT knob sets the general direction and the distance of that animation, or modulation, where the attack knob sets the speed of the initial direction, either up or down. So here, if we set the attack all the way up, that means a slow attack. So the cutoff point is moving slowly up and then slowly down if we move it to the negative side. A shorter attack will make it move quicker, in this case down, or up if we make it positive. The decay release knob is going to control how quickly or slowly the filter moves back. The filter cutoff point moves back to its original position. And when we have them both, the filter cutoff point will move either down or up, either a short or long distance, depending on the position of the EG intensity knob. If we reduce the attack or eliminate the attack, the filter will only move back to the cutoff point and not move away. The last interesting thing to note about EG intensity, or filter modulation, or filter animation in general, is that as we modulate the filter, we're not really affecting the pitch of the note we're playing, just the sounds that we're letting through or not. So the filter with resonance is generating its own sound, and the animation of the filter is generating its own sound. But the pitch of the note itself is independent of that. You can see as I play here high or low notes, the filter action remains the same. It's just how it passes through harmonics and the harmonics that change, and therefore the change to the sound. Okay, let's move on to modulation. Modulation lets you automatically change or animate the filter, pitch, edit, level, pan, and insert effects knobs automatically over time. As you turn the modulation knob, you'll see the same 6 knobs or same 6 modulation parameters appear again and again. They're just being modulated differently. And in total, there are 12 different ways to modulate these knobs. So 12 different modulation sources affect 6 different modulation destinations. That's 72 modulations possible in total. So we have 12 groups of 6 modulations each. The first 4 are one-shots or one-time movements. And these are modulations 1 to 24. And modulations 25 to 72 are the other 8 types of modulations, which are different types of endless repetitive modulations going back and forth, also known by the somewhat confusing name of LFO, low frequency oscillator. I'm going to use pitch modulation to demonstrate the different modulation types. Once you've selected the modulation type, use the mod depth knob to select how far it goes, and the mod speed knob to select how quickly it gets there. So to complete this example, this is the EG plus modulation affecting pitch. The flip side of that is EG minus, which with pitch starts from a low pitch and gradually goes up depending on the mod speed. Here, as always, the deeper the mod depth, the farther away the motion starts. When there's a BPM or B next to the modulation name, it means that the speed of that modulation is synchronized with the tempo of the song you're playing. So I'll set the speed of this pitch modulation, let's say here, and then go ahead and change the tempo of the song, and you'll see that as I lower the tempo, the speed of the pitch change is modified as well, even though I'm not touching the speed modulation knob at all. When I do go back and change the speed knob, it's going to be synchronized to the beat of the song, and I'll show you a bit more of that later. Let's take a look at the LFOs. The triangle LFO basically goes up and down across a range. Change the mod depth, you'll increase the range. And change the speed, you'll change the speed at which the pitch cycles through the ranges. And of course, just like I'm applying it to the pitch here, you can apply this to the filter cutoff point, to the level, pan, and so on. The next LFO is also a triangle LFO, but this time the speed is synchronized to the beat of the song or the tempo of the song that you're playing. Next one up is a sawtooth motion, also synchronized to the beat. Next one up, sawtooth going down. And I think you're starting to get the idea. I'll just quickly cycle through these. Square wave going up. Square wave going down is just the same but opposite, so I'll spare you that. S and H means sample and hold. Basically, it moves randomly between different levels. The movement is immediate, and it's synchronized to the tempo of the song. And finally, the random modulation, which moves randomly between levels, but just does it smoothly as opposed to S and H. So this concludes our review of modulation. Let's move on to the amplitude envelope generator. Level is pretty simple. It controls the level of your part, and pan controls the left and right balance of the current part. The attack and decay knobs don't have any effect on the volume of the part unless the amp EG button is turned on. The attack knob controls how quickly the volume of the part goes from 0 to the maximum level. The decay release knob controls how long it takes the amplitude or level or volume to go back down from its peak level to 0. Unfortunately, the Electribe doesn't have a sustain level setting like typical synth. The volume just goes up and then down. The attack will stop going up if you release the pad, but the decay will release regardless of whether you hold the pad or not. So once you have amp EG turned on, there's no way to keep the sound going as you hold the pad down and then have it stop when you lift the pad. So if you want a sound that just goes on until you let go of the pad, turn off the amp EG. Then, if you want that sound to decay after you release the pad, you can sort of fake it using either insert effects or master effects. Okay, so now that we've covered amplitude envelopes and filter envelopes, we can discuss the difference between mono 1, mono 2, poly 1, and poly 2. Poly 2 resets the envelopes for every key you press, whether you play legato or not. Poly 1 keeps the filter and amplitude envelopes going as long as you play legato. Same goes for mono. Mono 2 re-triggers the envelope for every key you press. And mono 1 keeps the envelope going as long as you're playing legato. If you don't play legato, triggering every note individually will re-trigger the envelope. Let's move on to insert effects. Insert effects work on all incoming sounds, whether it's audio in, samples, or oscillators. Using this is very straightforward. Turn the insert effects knob to select your effect. And turn the edit knob to edit it. Don't forget to make sure that the iEffects on button is lit, otherwise the effects won't have any impact. And this applies to modulation as well. If the light isn't on, you won't hear the modulation. On to master effects. Master effects apply to any track or part that has the MFX send button lit. Use Shift and Master Effects to choose the effect. Make sure that MFX hold is on if you want the effect to keep going when you leave the chaos path. And then use the MFX send button to control whether that part gets the effect or not. There are plenty of effects to choose from. And the chaos or XY pad controls the different parameters of the effect. For example, on the low pass filter, going left or right controls the cutoff point, and going up or down controls the resonance. And last but not least, you can record manual modulations over time by motion sequencing. Just hit record as the track is playing, and move the knob you want to affect. You can modulate multiple parameters. You can also record XY pad motion. Once you start recording, the record button will start blinking, and it'll stop after one full loop of the pattern you're playing. To add additional motion sequencing, hit the record button again, and twist another knob. That's it. Hit like and subscribe if you want to see more. See you later.